declares that Hiram is the symbol of something concealed. He is not a man. He represents all of us. So what they are saying in their ritual is that the 3 apprentice Masons murdered mankind instead of Hiram Abiff. The ritual continues. But he, meaning Hiram, has fallen under the blows of 3 assassins. 3 scoundrels have thwarted his happiness and rights and have annihilated him. Now we are going to see who the Masons think have destroyed Hiram, representing all of mankind. The 3 infamous assassins are law, property, and religion. So the ritual explains that even the scoundrels are not men, but are symbols of something else. In this case, law, property, and religion. So the Mason learns that the concept that governments restrict man's freedoms, religion teaches man absolutes, and the concept of private property restricts man's ability to enjoy his freedom. That means that the 33rd degree Mason believes that law, meaning God's law, killed mankind. The 33rd degree Mason believes that property, meaning the right to own private property, murdered mankind. And the 33rd degree Mason believes that religion, meaning man learning God's truth in church or through the Bible, killed mankind. So they're saying quite simply, law, property, and religion murdered mankind. The quote continues as it starts to explain what the initiate into the 33rd degree has just learned. Law, because it is not in harmony with the rights of the individual man and duties of social man in society, rights which belong to all. The Mason is taught that God's law has restricted man's freedom by restricting his right to decide for himself in all things. The ritual continues. Property, because the earth belongs to nobody and its fruits belong to all, in proportion as they are required by each for the needs of his own well-being. The ritual explains that God interfered with the rights of man because he taught that we were not to steal the property of another. Man can decide for himself how to answer the question, what if the property was needed because somebody was hungry? God's commandment is not, thou shalt not steal unless you are hungry. It is simply, thou shalt not steal, period. No man has the right to take another's property, even if he is hungry. This is called a moral absolute. There are others, however, who believe the lie that property belongs to those who have need of it. One was Karl Marx, the father of so-called communism. Marx wrote in the Communist Manifesto in 1848 this amazing sequence of phrases. The theory of the communists may be summed up in one single sentence: abolition of private property. He later wrote in a booklet called The Criticism of the Gotha Program in 1875 this, and I would urge you to memorize it. Look for it. It's all around us. It's in every aspect of our life. It's in this health care program that Hillary Clinton is recommending to the American people. From each according to his abilities, to each according to his needs. Marx believed that government should take from one to give to another. This is the essence of the communist philosophy. Government is intended to take property from one and give it to the poor. Government is going to take property from the rich and give it to the poor. Karl Marx does not believe in the God-given right to private property. And the Masons are teaching this. Property destroyed mankind because the earth belongs to nobody and its fruits belong to all, in proportion as they are required by each for the needs of his own well-being. So that means that the Masons and the communists both are teaching the same thing, simply the abolition of private property. And notice that I'm not making that charge. I found it in their own writings. And the New Age religion, soon to be led by this individual known as Lord Maitreya, also believes in communism. Benjamin Creme wrote this in his book, The Externalization of the Hierarchy and the Masters of Wisdom. The world will have to learn to live more simply. Every nation has assets, and these belong to all men, to all nations. Each nation will be asked to draw up an inventory of all that it possesses and all that it needs, and this will be made over to the United Nations. I say have to, it is up to us to endorse this. Nothing will be forced on us, but the advice of the hierarchy and the Christ will be to do this, to make over to trust for all men the produce of the world, to be held by United Nations agencies in trust for all, so that no country owns anything. Then that will be distributed amongst all mankind according to need. That's what Karl Marx said. Mr. Krem says that nothing will be forced on us. And I'm asking the question, what happens when someone objects to the United Nations coming to hold their property in trust for all mankind? The person who believes in the right to private property will not be allowed to survive, because there will be no right to private property in the New World Order. And to confirm that, I would like to read from page 111 of Benjamin Krem's book entitled Maitreya's Mission. Mr. Krem quotes Lord Maitreya as saying, "Man must share or die." That's it. There is no more to consider. You will give up your right to private property or die. There is no other option. Notice that Mr. Krem says that all produce will be held in trust, all property, even the property of those who object. So he is lying. There will be no right to private property in the New World Order, and I'm saying that is just like the Masons want. And we're going to like this. Mr. Krem continues. This will mean for the developed third of the world an entirely new and simpler living, which will be seen to be a great deal happier. For there is nothing easier to bear than something shared. I mean, if you haven't very much, it is easier if no one else has very much. So the New Age religion is communist in its basis. The Masons are also communists because they want to abolish the right to private property. So it is a fair question to ask the Masons. Why did Karl Marx say the same thing as the Masons? I can find no evidence that Karl Marx was a member of the Masonic Lodge, but he sure wrote like one. But we can say that he worshipped Satan, the devil. This is a book written by Richard Wurmbrand, a Christian minister. It is entitled, Was Karl Marx a Satanist? This book presents the evidence that Karl Marx joined the satanic cult early in his life while he was at college. I've also read that 80% of what Marx wrote has not been released because it is kept in a university somewhere in Europe. And I think the reason is because his writings would reveal that he was a Satan worshiper. So here we can see how the academic world helps in the cover-up of the connection between communism and Satanism. And to show you the academic worlds often believe in the ideas of Karl Marx, I'd like to show you this advertisement for the world's great thinkers. The ad says, their ideas have literally changed the world, and they can change your world for the better. And the man in the middle of all of those men is Karl Marx, the communist. This advertisement is saying that his ideas can change your world for the better. The idea of the communist can change your world for the better. But Karl Marx, the believers in the New Age religion, and the Masons are not the only ones to preach that we must abolish the right to private property. President Lyndon Johnson said exactly the same thing in 1964. President Lyndon Johnson said, quote, "We are going to try to take all of the money that we think is unnecessarily being spent and take it from the haves and give it to the have-nots that need it so much." There is absolutely no difference in what Karl Marx said and what Lyndon Johnson said. The two statements preach that the government exists to take from one to give to another. This means that both Karl Marx and Lyndon Johnson are talking about the abolition of private property. President Johnson created the war on poverty, wherein he put into practice what he and Karl